We are going to look at the accounts of the 1900 Boxer Rebellion in China, and we're going to start off from a historical vantage point and get into the accounts of the Chinese Orthodox Christians of the time. Before we go into the religious aspect, I'm going to read the historical accounts from history.com. Boxer Rebellion of 1900. In the Boxer Rebellion of 1900, Chinese secret organization called the Society of the Righteous and Harmonious Fists led an uprising in northern China against the spread of Western and Japanese influence there. The rebels, referred to by Westerners as boxers because they performed physical exercises they believed would make them able to withstand bullets, killed foreigners and Chinese Christians, and destroyed foreign property. From June to August, the boxers besieged the foreign district of China's capital, city of Beijing. It was then called Peking, until an international force that included American troops subdued the uprising. By the terms of the Boxer Protocol, which officially ended the rebellion in 1901, China agreed to pay more than $330 million in reparations. Cause of the Boxer Rebellion. By the end of the 19th century, Western nations and Japan had forced China's ruling Qing dynasty to accept wide foreign control over the country's economic affairs. Throughout the Opium Wars of 1839 to 1842 and 1856 to 1860, popular rebellions, and the Sino-Japanese War, China had fought to resist the foreigners, but it lacked a modernized military and suffered millions of casualties. It says America returned the money it received from China after the Boxer Rebellion on the condition it be used to fund the creation of a university in Beijing. Let's see. By the late 1890s, a Chinese secret group called the Society of Righteous and Harmonious Fists had begun carrying out regular attacks on foreigners and Chinese Christians. The rebels performed calisthenics, rituals, and martial arts that they believed would give them the ability to withstand bullets and other forms of attack. Westerners referred to these rituals as shadow boxing, leading to the boxer's name. Although the boxers came from various parts of society, many were peasants, particularly from the Shandong province, which had been struck by natural disasters such as famine and flooding. In the 1890s, China had given territorial commercial concessions in the area to several European nations, and the boxers blamed their poor standard of living on foreigners who were colonizing their country. In 1900, the Boxer movement spread to the Beijing area, where the boxers killed Chinese Christians and Christian missionaries, destroyed churches, railroad stations, and other property. On June 20th, 1900, the boxers began a siege of Beijing's legation district, where the official quarters of foreign diplomats were located. The following day, Empress Dowager Zuzi declared a war on all foreign nations with diplomatic ties in China. As the Western powers and Japan organized a multinational force to crush the rebellion, the siege stretched into weeks, and the diplomats, their families, and guards suffered through hunger and degrading conditions as they fought to keep the boxers at bay. By some estimates, several hundred foreigners and several thousand Chinese Christians were killed during this time. On August 14th, after fighting its way through northern China, an international force of approximately 20,000 troops from 8 nations, Austria, Hungary, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States, arrived to take Beijing and rescue the foreigners and Chinese Christians. The Boxer Rebellion formally ended with the signing of the Boxer Protocol on September 7, 1901. By terms of the agreement, forts protecting Beijing were to be destroyed. Boxer and Chinese government officials involved in the uprising were to be punished. Foreign legations were permitted to station troops in Beijing for their defense. China was prohibited from importing arms for 2 years, and it agreed to pay more than $330 million in reparations to the foreign nations involved. The Qing dynasty, established in 1644, was weakened by the Boxer Rebellion. Following an uprising in 1911, the dynasty came to an end and China became a republic in 1912. Okay, so that's our historical account. Now I want to show some clips here of the Boxer Rebellion movie from 1975, 1976. This is a Shaw Brothers Kung Fu movie. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but I got it halfway through. We can check this out. And hold on. Let me fix this. Okay. Hold on. Let me refresh the screen. Alright, so these Boxer Kung Fu Secret Society people.
The big stuff.
The Boxer martial artists from this time believed that they had magical powers. So,
联军就快打入京城了。
越乱越好。
so that lady is supposed to be Empress Dowager. I was thinking about how a lot of these outfits reminded me of the gangs of Kung Fu martial artists that are in Big Trouble in Little China and other Kung Fu movies. So that's a trailer for Boxer Rebellion 1975. And in the movie, they show some of the rituals and the conversations about their abilities. And from the movie from the parts that I watched, the leader of the movement believed that he had magical powers and was responsible for everybody else's success, basically. Alright, so now we're going to get into the Orthodox website from China, and we'll read this account from Father Jeffrey Kors on some more details. We'll get into the siege at the Russian legation in Beijing. This is the days, I guess it's the days after the event. And so let me see, maybe I should put that after. Okay, so we'll get into the overall account. We'll check out, I'm not going to do all of it, but we'll read some of the accounts of these martyrs and some of the aftermath. The Chinese martyrs of the Boxer Rebellion. Orthodox Christianity has often been described as the faith of the martyrs. Without doubt, the centuries have shown among the Orthodox an unparalleled degree of suffering for the sake of Christ's name. Yet, despite the dramatic increase in Orthodox martyrdom in the last century, Orthodox believers living in the comforts of North America, remain largely isolated from the suffering of the saints. Ironically, the Western world has become a more potent and indeed more subtle enemy of Christian orthodoxy than any regime of the past. Cut off from the struggles of our Christian forebears, we have too readily accepted materialism and hedonism. To be a Christian, especially an Orthodox Christian, has become a fundamentally countercultural calling. The arrival of the year 2000 marks the centennial of the first martyrs of the last century, and the first known group of Orthodox martyrs from China, a group who knew well the meaning of standing against the social tide of their day. Some of the 222 Orthodox martyrs of June 10th, 1900 were direct descendants of the Russian mission set up at the end of the 17th century, after Russia lost its Albazin outpost to Chinese forces. Orthodoxy's beginnings in China. So this is before the event. This is how it came to China. With the Chinese recapture of Albazin, the Chinese imperial court looked with curiosity and tolerance upon the Russians and their territories, allowing them a surprising level of religious freedom. A former Buddhist temple near Beijing was converted into a church dedicated to St. Nicholas, and church vestments and holy objects were sent from the imperial court in Russia. The Chinese and Russian governments proceeded to establish diplomatic relations, a move facilitated by the presence and work of the Albazin Chinese Orthodox. Since the Russian soldiers were viewed as a loose equivalent of the warrior class of Chinese society, they moved easily among the Chinese aristocracy, with many marrying Chinese noblewomen. Just as many of the first converts at Rome were noble patrons of the church, Orthodox Christianity in China was to see a similar beginning. In the years following, Orthodoxy made significant inroads among the Albazin Chinese population, becoming a kind of ethnic religion of the people. Emperor Kangxi was favorable toward these Christians. For a time, it was hoped the emperor might become a kind of St. Constantine of the Orient. When the Chinese court later discovered that the local Roman Catholic missionaries followed orders from Western masters, however, Emperor Kangxi and his successors began persecutions against Christians. Because of their position at the court and their foothold among the Albazin Chinese faithful, the Orthodox were spared much of the persecution for this time. Orthodox missions in China were cautious from the beginning. Emperor Peter the Great observed, "This is a very important enterprise, but for God's sake let us be cautious and circumspect, not to provoke either the Chinese authorities or the Jesuits, whose den is there since long ago. To this end, the clergymen are needed not so much as scholarly, but rather reasonable and amicable, lest this holy effort suffers a painful defeat because of a certain kind of arrogance." While the growth of the Orthodox Chinese mission was modest, its faithful were solid witnesses for the faith. Just as pagan Rome saw Christian devotion to Christ as a rival to imperial loyalty, so too did the imperial Chinese of the late 19th century see Christians as enemies of the emperor. While some in China were embracing Western modernist ideas, others, including the Dowager Empress, nationalist, and those who practiced martial arts, sought to eliminate any challenges to tradition, including foreign influences. This conservative movement was dubbed by foreigners the Boxer Movement. By June 1900, placards calling for the death of foreigners and Christians covered the walls around Beijing. Armed bands combed the streets of the city, setting fire to homes with imperial blessing, killing Chinese Christian and foreigners. Faced with torture or death, some of the Chinese Christians did deny Christ, while others, emboldened by the faith of the martyrs and the prayers of the saints, declared boldly the name of the Lord. Among these were priest Mitrophon, Si Chung, his Matuska, Tatiana, and their children Isaiah, Serge, and John. Baptized by St. Nicholas of Japan, St. Mitrophon was a shy and retiring priest who avoided honors and labored continually for the building of new churches, for the translation of spiritual books, and for the care of his flock. Yet in Christ, who gives more than we can ask or imagine, St. Mitrophon and his flock became lions in the face of marauding wolves. It was with this reassurance that St. Mitrophon met his martyrdom on June 10, 1900. About 70 faithful had gathered in his home for consolation when the Boxers surrounded the house. While some of the faithful managed to escape, including St. Mitrophon, were stabbed or burned to death. Like the priests of old, slaughtered in the sight of Elijah, St. Mitrophon's holy body fell beneath the date tree in the yard of his home. And I'm going to cut that one short because we're going to get into accounts of the martyrs, and I want to read straight from what we have there. Okay. Yeah, we'll go on to the accounts of the martyrs now. Once again, this information is coming from Orthodox, from an official Orthodox Chinese website, orthodox.cn, and the pages have to be translated to read this. All right. First published in Russian in 1906, in a 1906 issue of Izvestia Pravolazglavnogo Bratva Vikite, and in 1917 issue of Chinese Good News. All right. All right. Once again, this is the accounts of the martyrs of Chinese Orthodox Church who fell victim in Beijing 1900. And this is an English translation from a 1935 edition. So we have a picture here of Priest Mitrophon himself. Looks like taken in July of 1882. Photo courtesy of Bishop Seraphim of Sendai. All right. Priest Mitrophon, his Chinese name being Chang Yangji, was born in 1855 on the 10th day of the 12th month. Before reaching 20 years of age, he was appointed to the post of catechist. At 25, he was ordained to the priesthood by Nikolai, Bishop of Japan. He lost his father in early childhood and was raised under the care of his grandmother Ekaterina and his mother Marina. His mother was a teacher at a school for females. At the time, he experienced many troubles. When Archimandrite Paladi became head of the mission for the second time, he charged his teacher Jiren Long Yuan to take care in educating Mitrophon in order to prepare him for eventual ordination. Mitrophon was a humble person, very cautious and quiet, peaceful and not impassioned. Even when faced with great insults, he did not try to justify himself. Archimandrite Paladi's successor was Archimandrite Flavian, who later became Metropolitan of Kiev. From the time of his arrival in Beijing, Archimandrite Paladi charged him, as well as the teacher Long Yuan, to try to have Mitrophon attain what had been predestined, that is, the priestly rank. Mitrophon did not want to accept ordination and constantly refused, saying, "How can a person with insufficient abilities and charity dare to accept this great rank?" But under the forceful urging of Archimandrite Flavian and the persuasion of the teacher, Mitrophon obeyed, even though he knew that by accepting priesthood his end would be inauspicious. Under Archimandrite Flavian, priest Mitrophon assisted him in translating and checking books. For 15 years he tirelessly served God while suffering many hurts and insults both from his own people and outsiders. He finally had a mild breakdown. Sometime after this, spent 3 years living outside the mission, receiving half of his previous salary. All his life, the priest Mitrophon was not avaricious and many took advantage of this. In 1900, on the evening of June 1st, the Boxers burned the mission's buildings. Many Christians hiding from danger assembled in Priest Mitrofan's home. Although Father Mitrofan, his former ill-wishers were among them, he did not drive them out. Seeing that some people were dispirited, he strengthened them, saying that all time of troubles had come and would be difficult to avoid. He himself several times daily went to look at the burned church. On the 10th of June, toward 10 in the evening, soldiers and Boxers surrounded Father Mitrofan's dwelling. Up to 70 Christians were there at the time. The stronger among them fled, while Father Mitrofan and many others, primarily women and children, remained and were tortured. Father Mitrofan sat in his courtyard when the Boxers punctured his chest like a honeycomb, and he fell under a date tree. His neighbors removed his body to his courtyard when the Boxers punctured his chest like a honeycomb, and he fell under a date tree. His neighbors removed his body to the mission's almshouse. Later, the priest-monk Avrami picked up Father Mitrofan's body, and in 1903, during the first commemoration of the Martyrs, it, along with others, was placed under the altar in the Martyrs' church, at the place where Father Mitrofan was tortured. Now a cross is erected, and every Memorial Day of the Martyrs, a sacred procession takes place to commemorate them. The father of Mitrofan also included, the family of Father Mitrofan also included his wife Tatiana from the Lee family and 3 sons: the older Isaiah, the second Serge, now an archpriest, and the third Ioan. So let's remember that this is from 1935, because I learned that this church is no longer there. Let me see if I can. So this is what the church looked like at the time, but it was burned, or basically destroyed by the communists in the 50s. Tatiana, his wife, 44 years of age, on June 10th, Tatiana was saved from the Boxers with the help of her son Isaiah's bride. But on the following day, June 11th, she was seized in the morning, and together with 19 others was sent outside the Andingmen gate to Zhaoyingfeng, to the Boxer camp, and then executed by beheading at the place where there is now the Treyugolnik Triangle, an almshouse for the poor. Isaiah served in the artillery for 23 years. On June 7th, the Boxers executed him by beheading on the big street near Pingzemen, because it had been known that he was a Christian. Ioan, or John, he was 7 years old at the time. On the evening of June 10th, when Father Mitrofan was killed, the Boxers split Ioan's shoulders and severed his toes. His brother Isaiah's bride managed to save him from death by hiding him in the latrine. In the morning, he sat at the entrance without clothes and shoes. And when people asked, "Are you hurting?" he answered, "It doesn't hurt." Boys scoffed at him, calling him Erma Ozi, but he answered, "I believe in God and am not Erma Ozi." He got used to answering thus because the pagans constantly called Christians devil's disciples. The word Ermaozi has this meaning. Ioan asked neighbors for water, but they not only did not give it to him, but chased him away. Protasi Chang and Herodian Zhu, who were not yet baptized, testify that they saw this boy with wounded shoulders and feet. The wounds were 1 3/4 inches deep, but he felt no pain, and when seized again by the Boxers, he felt no fear and went peacefully. One old man expressed a regret about him, saying, "What is this boy guilty of? It is his parents' fault that he became a devil's disciple." Others made fun of him, derided him, or simply smiled with contempt. So he was taken as a lamb to the slaughter. Maria was a 19-year-old bride of Father Mitrofan's son Isaiah. 2 days before the Boxers' pogrom, she came to Father Mitrofan's home wishing to die in her groom's family. When the Boxers surrounded Father Mitrofan's house on June 10th, she very courageously helped to rescue others, supporting them in climbing over the wall. When the Boxers and soldiers broke down the doors and entered the courtyard, Maria bravely accused them of beating people lawlessly and indiscriminately, and they didn't dare to kill her, but simply wounded her hand and pierced her leg. In general, she exhibited uncommon courage and sense. Father Mitrofan's son Sergei 3 times tried to convince her to leave and hide, but she answered, "I was born near the church of the Most Holy Mother of God, and here I will die." And she remained where the church was. Soon soldiers and Boxers arrived there, and the courageous woman was martyred, considering death as a departure to a place of blessed rest. Give rest, O Lord, to the souls of your servants, Priest Mitrofan and those with him, and make their memory be eternal. Amen. All right. So I'm just going to do that first page of those, and we'll do one last look at the after, whatever was going on after. So this is the siege days, personal experiences of an American women and children during the Peking siege by Ada Haven Martyrs. Today I saw Mrs. Conger, our minister's wife, out filling sandbags. A Greek priest was working with her, using a porcelain kettle. August 6th. So this is August. Okay, this is all after. Yesterday, Mrs. Martyrs and I made an interesting trip. First, we started to go over to the Russian legation to see the soldiers' graves. Our soldiers are buried there as well as the Russian, for that compound is permanent possession, while the American legation is only private property, rented. They are buried in a quiet court. A statue marks the entrance to the court, separated by some shrubbery. Blah, 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 blah. The Russians were marked by wooden crosses with 3 horizontal pieces. One put at an angle with the rest, not parallel. These also had wreaths of artificial flowers, Christmas tree tinsel. One also had a birthday picture card. Okay. All right, maybe we won't do this. Yeah, maybe we'll have to do a follow-up. I just really wanted to get something out there on this. This is a subject I wanted to dig into a little bit. So if there is any response after this, we can continue on the Orthodox website from China. You guys just let me know if you have anything to add in the comments, any suggestions. We can go deeper in this if you want. Check the follow-up or see anything further on the subject. But I appreciate anybody that's watching after the fact. Be sure to like and subscribe, and yeah, we'll check it out. We'll do it again. Have a good night. Bye-bye.